Hey everyone, welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga. This is episode 69.
Hey,
And it's fitting that, first, my name is Vincent.
I'm Matt.
I'm Mike.
And instead of a sponsor this week, we're being paid by the United States government to remind everyone don't lick wires. Be safe. Um, yeah, be safe. So it's funny that this is episode 69 because we're talking about one of the most exciting, captivating, arousing stories in Spider-Man history.
Yeah, you know what? Reading this story does feel like I have somebody's asshole in my face.
This is the Clone Conspiracy, which is too long. So it's 2 episodes, but it's really 3 episodes because if you recall last episode, the entire episode was a whole arc of prelude for this story.
And all of it
And
is super important and at the same time doesn't matter at all.
yeah, that was basically our conclusion is that nothing happened at all, except for actually they somehow snuck in like 4 major status quo developments across
Yeah,
4 issues.
it's so weird.
But to be honest, I was reading this and this was a week ago. I was struggling to remember how the hell that ended.
Yeah.
It ended with a death and a broken clock.
Yes. I don't remember the clock.
Yeah, I don't remember the clock either.
Oh yeah, you don't remember the clock that the elder Jameson wanted Peter to bring to give to Jonah, but then his dumbass drops it during a fight and picks it up thinking, oh yeah, this only plummeted 40 feet. I'm sure it's fine. And he opens it and it's all broken.
You're not just making that up.
I'm not. No, that happened. We didn't
I-
talk about it.
I have no memory of that.
All
Well,
right, so
I hate this stuff. It's the worst stuff we've ever read in the show, and I hate it. I
the
hate it.
the Clone Conspiracy proper, it's so big, so epic that we need a mini series.
And I hate
So
it.
the Clone Conspiracy is 5. I think it's 5 issues. Today we're just talking about half the series. So let's jump in with Clone Conspiracy number 1. And already off the bat, you know it's a big deal because instead of using Giuseppe Camicoli, who is kind of the main Amazing Spider-Man artist of this era, the Clone Conspiracy issues are drawn by Jim Cheung.
And I really like it.
It's the only good part about this book.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really love it. I mean, I don't know about love, but it's pretty great art. A lot of times I don't like Chung. I feel like he draws the same faces a lot.
I say all of his faces are the same.
And I especially associate with that, like a lot of his covers and everything.
Sure. It's sort of like looking at there's a panel where Pete's reflecting on all the people he's lost in his life. And looking at this panel, there are a number of faces that I could not tell you who Jim is drawing here, you know?
Yeah.
His work on Justice League's better than this, though.
But he has,
I consistently really like his art, and that holds up here as well.
yeah, he has a good texture. Like there's one, it doesn't matter which specific issue it's in. There's one page where like 2/3 of the page is a double page splash of the Rhino and Electro fighting Spider-Man, and the
Yeah.
Rhino like busting through a wall or something. And the page is really great. I don't know. I suck at understanding how art works, so I kind of think of Jim Chung as like, especially in the context of Spider-Man, like he's got a tiny bit of Romita Jr. in him, in my opinion. Also, in a similar way, but not. Also, sometimes reminds me of Art Adams.
Okay. I see it.
But I like his art.
It's
For
funny you say that, but I get some Mike Diodato references in here, especially in that dark lit shot of Spider-Man like jumping around, sneaking around.
for Marvel, Chung, he did part of the Infinity event. He done some scattered Avengers stuff.
He did Young Avengers, didn't he?
Yes, he did Young Avengers. That was his big thing, and then the Children's Crusade, which
Yeah.
is basically just a Young Avengers series. But I'm pretty sure, and then very recently he's been doing Justice League, as Mike said. But
Well,
Hey,
alternating
Rico.
on it. He's not always drawing it.
but some of his earliest stuff, I know he spent some time at CrossGen.
I'd rather
And
read cross-gen books than read this because I hate it.
yeah. But Jim Chung, pretty good artist.
Yeah.
And this issue opens that Jay Jameson died. And honestly, again, I kind of totally forgot that this happened at the very end of the last episode. And Jonah, so they're at Jay Jameson's funeral. And Jonah starts freaking out like a little bitch.
I hate the way Dan Slott writes Jonah. Just consistently, I hate it.
I hate the way we always have to have a scene at a funeral where then someone confronts someone at a funeral and yells at them in a sea of people because that never happens.
Yeah. Though John Jameson, the third, or however it works, he's there consoling his dad, and he's looking pretty great, tempting me to buy his soon-to-be released complete collection of the Man Wolf stories from the 70s.
Shut up, Vince.
And
rather be reading those.
maybe that'll be a random spin-off episode when we finish the show with
Yeah.
no relation. And for some reason, just the fact that I wanted to go on that tangent, it's also made me like fully realize for a second that through very tenuous relationships, Peter Parker is Manwolf's uncle, half uncle, kind of.
Oh my god.
Wait, why?
That's amazing.
Because Pete
yeah.
is effectively May's son. May was married to Jay Jameson, whose son is Jonah. And so,
Yeah.
as we know, Jonah and Pete are effectively half brothers.
I love that so much.
And I feel like, I mean, that definitely wasn't taken advantage of. I really have no idea what overall has been done with John in the past decade or so.
My nephew, the werewolf.
Yeah, exactly. That's drama.
Yeah.
Nick Spencer, where's Manwolf?
So MJ and Anna Maria are at Jay Jameson's funeral. Off air, Mike questioned why MJ is there. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I kind of get it.
I mean,
she's front and center too. Why is she there?
I mean, Jonah's a big part of Pete's life, and Pete was a big part of her life, so I kind of
But they're
get
not
it.
seeing each other, nor are they really kind of connected anymore at this point. Why is she there?
I mean, I think it makes more sense for her to be there than Anna Maria.
Yeah, you could also argue
I'm not going to dispute that.
some of it. You can argue even like unrelated to Peter. Like maybe you can argue like society type of stuff. I mean, at certain times, MJ is supposed to be this like major socialite New York figure.
The era where she's working with Tony Stark halfway across the country.
Yeah, I think that's why this is happening. But so the funeral's over. Everyone kind of shames Pete. And he goes to investigate because the reason Jay Jameson died is because Pete decided last minute to have him not sign up for a new use clone, whatever thingy that they're doing based on really assumptions that he made. Though he did look into it. He doesn't have like 100% concrete proof yet.
No, it's pretty tenuous.
So he looks into the employee of his who he did allow to go through with the procedure. And Salterez, Jerry Salterez, this guy, he's kidnapped or something by New You. And
well, he wasn't taking his meds.
Yeah, He wasn't taking his medicine. You snapped him back up. And there's a scene where Pete, he's like, I'm the CEO of a major company and I'm friends with Spider-Man. I can fix everything. Which I don't know, that stood out to me as far as encapsulating the status quo. And
Yep.
Pete makes a promise that no matter what, he's going to save this no-name employee of his.
Yeah, well, he doesn't.
Within the context of this episode, in fact, like we don't get back to Jerry Saltaris
We're
at all.
never seeing this man again.
I don't think it ever gets back to him. I could be mistaken, but I don't think it does.
We will
Cool. That'll be
definitely
great in 3 story arcs when Nick Spencer picks this up and makes it good.
we will definitely see and check in next episode. And so what happens is these clone, whatever you want to call them, they have cellular degeneration, and that's why they have to take the pills. And then Anna Maria is talking to Pete on the phone and just interchangeably uses Spider-Man and Peter while she's at Horizon Labs or whatever the equivalent is now.
Horizon University.
Yeah, I guess in the billion issues we don't read that maybe all of Horizon knows his identity. I have to assume. Like I can't imagine they would let this slip.
And I know we already talked about art, but I do want to comment on how beautiful Shung's Spider-Man is, except for the fact that he has to be wearing this stupid glowing spider.
Yep.
I don't love his face. I'm gonna be honest. It's like too small for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I really like the way
something
he draws
slightly off about it. It looks like too small for his body.
Okay.
I don't know. It's good.
There are scenes in this issue as well where he's trying to be stealthy, which again just calls into question the whole stupid spider.
Well, not only that, but since the suit can do everything, why isn't it just not a stealth suit? Why doesn't he have a stealth mode?
Well,
because
I think
last time Dan Slott did that, it was terrible.
Well, that too.
But the suit can do anything. It morphs into a Prowler costume, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And well, actually, we kind of were misleading when talking about Jerry because Jerry does show back up as a nervous system and eyeballs floating in a tube.
Yeah, and he's still alive, but like
Yeah.
but we're never gonna get back to him.
Yeah, we'll see if he gets his body back. And Miles Warren pops out of nowhere. And so, Pete figured it out. It's the Jackal. And then the new Electro and Rhino pop out. And the new Electro is not used to the old tricks because she's new to the job. And so Spidey does the classic figure out some water and fucks her up. Which it's a kind of fun scene.
It's fine, yeah.
And then Gwen comes out of nowhere. And she doesn't set off his Spidey sense, which is throwing up some red flags. And then we don't get one giant tease like that. Then we get the next one, which is Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus in his old body.
This book ends 4 different times. Miles shows up and you think the book's over, but no, it's not. The Rhino shows up and you think the book's over, but no, there's still the whole fight. And then Gwen shows up and the book's gotta be over. Oh, no, there's still more. Here's Dr. fucking Octopus, which I think is maybe the most underwhelming reveal, but of course it's the last one because Dan Slott wrote it and everyone's still sucking his dick as superior. So this is a big deal.
Another ending you could have here is finding Jerry's nervous system and eyes and him going, he's still alive. There's another ending too.
Yeah, exactly.
I did say this off air, but I'm going to rant about it here. I'm so sick of the Gwen Stacy is here splash page because every time the story stops for Peter to gawk at her, and then we know it's not the real one. Stop. Yeah. Now, even though here they did something moderately interesting where it turns out to be Spider-Gwen, I still don't care. It's not the real Gwen. At this point, if Spider-Man sees a Gwen Stacy and it's not Spider-Man, just break the neck because it's going to be evil and you're going to, just break her neck, honestly, because it's never going to be good and she's never the real one.
Yeah, I mean that he should take Kingpin's advice from last episode where he just snapped his wife's neck.
Yep.
But all of those are not the ending. Well, they are, but we get an epilogue here.
Yeah, that
And
goes on forever.
I think within this episode, this is actually the most noteworthy thing, these few pages.
No.
First of all,
I hate this so much.
No.
first of all,
These pages, I don't want to talk about these pages.
well,
I don't want to talk about it. These pages aren't canon. This didn't happen.
so Jim Chung.
You know what did happen? You know what did happen over this? Norman and Gwen Stacy have 2 kids.
That didn't happen.
Well, it's funny because that's not addressed here, but
This didn't happen.
I thought it would be. I was waiting for it.
Main story art by Jim Chung, very good. This backup here, art by Ron Friends, and I think like a bunch of other artists and inkers or whatever. But it doesn't come off super inconsistent. They with the coloring as well. They're going for a retro 70s-esque flavor, even though it's Friends, so it really looks like mid 80s.
Yeah.
And so we get a huge retcon. It turns out Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man 121 was not unconscious on the bridge.
Oh, this is stupid.
And because during the fight, and I'm pretty and this is actually how it happened, if I recall correctly. You can go back to episode like 2 of our show to double check for yourself.
I think officially episode 1, but yes, episode 2 because we did the 0 episode.
Norman Osborn, as the Green Goblin, says Peter Parker during his fight on the bridge. And since Gwen Stacy's not unconscious, she learns last minute that Peter Parker's Spider-Man before she dies. And then, but like it's like they don't go too much into like her like inner thoughts, and so it's not clear. It's not clear if like she's like half unconscious and can't move, or if she's like plain dead for no reason.
Like dazed and like hazy. But yeah, that's what it is. Is that she's dazed and hazy, but it's all her inner monologue there. So we do get her thoughts though.
Yeah. We get all her thoughts, and she dies thinking about how much she hates Peter Parker. I fucking hate this so much.
I'd like to, if I'm Marvel, I want to put an embargo. I never want to see Gwen Stacy in another book ever again.
Well, so our friend Matt has read Amazing Spider-Man 121 for once more, more recently than we have, for a different thing that he does, Daily Spider Bites. And
daily.
No, I've been taking a break, which is a great way to say I just haven't been able to do it for like going on, I think maybe 2 weeks now. I gotta get back to it.
At this point, you're quite a ways or a little bit past Gwen's death.
Yeah.
But how did you really? What was your understanding of Gwen's interpretation of Spider-Man before she died?
She did not like him, but she did not, at that point, she didn't really hate him. Okay. At least not she disliked him enough so that Pete didn't want to tell her about his identity, but it didn't really feel like she, I don't know, wanted to personally take his head off or anything, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, this story, like I remember reading this. I don't think it works. I remember reading this issue when this story started, and really just this epilogue was all I cared about, and in a very negative way.
Yeah, well, because like Gwen died just after Pete decided he was going to propose, and like so if she hadn't died, the story going forward would have been, you know, he was going to tell her that he was Spider-Man. And I think if that had happened, what?
Which is what they did in those Spanish comics.
Yeah, apparently, and it looks like it worked out there, right? And I think it would have worked out here as well if, you know, he didn't die. So because of that, I don't think her characterization in this issue is consistent at all, and also it's not canon. It didn't happen.
But back to continuity, she wakes up basically the next second after her death in a test tube. And the Jackal catches her up basically through the Clone Saga and what the Jackal does. And he's being a little coy about his identity. He talks about Miles Warren, doesn't explicitly say, I'm Miles Warren. And he wants Gwen to work with him because he can prevent any kinds of crazy deaths like that from happening again. And to prove his worth, out pops Captain Stacy. And so I guess that's the final big reveal for this issue. The like sixth one.
Sure.
The seventh ending to this book.
It's like Lord of the Rings.
I think I've said it on the podcast before, but what panel do you think has been drawn more?
Vincent, please do not compare Spider-Man: The Clone Conspiracy to the Lord of the Rings ever again.
What about if you compare some of the Hobbit movies?
The Hobbit movie is much closer to that.
So I think
a bastardization is something I love. Yeah, that's great.
But I'm going to say it again. What panel has been drawn more? Gwen Stacy's death or Batman's parents' death?
Batman's parents.
Batman's parents.
Only because there's like a 40-year lead.
Yeah.
Now we take a detour because it's not like Amazing Spider-Man stops being published for this miniseries. It's running a long time.
Oh, I'm going to have words about this.
Amazing Spider-Man 20, it's credited to Dan Slott and Christos Gage as writers. And off the top of my head, and also not having certain books handy nearby, I don't remember how Christos Gage was usually credited in other stuff with Dan Slott. I don't know if they're always credited together as writers or if sometimes they do say like Slott story, Gage script, which I imagine is what was happening in these amazing issues.
I think they're usually credited together as writers. I think, but I could be wrong.
And art here by Cameron Coley, the usual guy. So this issue, we'll see. We have more amazing issues to read next week, but on this episode at least, each one kind of focuses on a different character that's intersecting with the main story.
Okay, and that's where I'm going to get angry here.
Yes.
So this book, and I'm going to basically frame it in this way. Mm-hmm. Matt, what event is currently going on in Amazing Spider-Man?
Hunted.
And what issue and what books is that taking place in?
Amazing Spider-Man.
And there's .hu issues, right? There's .hu issues, which are just like tack-ons.
Correct.
I don't think, after reading the first one, I don't think you intrinsically need to read them.
No.
But there's still one-offs focusing on what appears to be villains. Okay. But that whole event is taking place in Amazing Spider-Man.
Correct.
This book needs a whole prestige miniseries for 5 issues where the whole story is taking place. Mm-hmm. And the Amazing Spider-Man issues, which are your main book, are all exposition.
Yes.
This is terrible.
It is awful.
This is not how comics should work.
At this point, this was the tail end of my mail subscription. And so I wasn't reading The Clone Conspiracy. I was just reading Amazing Spider-Man. And it was confusing. It made no sense. And it was just meaningless. It's trash.
Yeah, well, it's weird because I feel like you do have to read these, but you're also not getting any actual plot development.
No story pushes forward in the amazing issues. That's unforgivable. If you're going to also label it as a part 2 of a story.
And I mean, and to be fair, a lot of this issue is devoted to telling things that we already know about Dr. Octopus. If you've been reading Amazing Spider-Man, which presumably you're reading issue 20, you might be reading the rest of it. You know what's happened to Dr. Octopus since Superior. Most of this book is not new information.
So in the book itself, we get a flashback dump on how Otto got his groove back. We get a bunch of Superior recap, and it ends in his mind in an Octobot again after the living brain was destroyed. And he goes to rob his own grave. There is a special Potter's Field specifically devoted to super criminals, which is an interesting-ish idea. Probably already done before, though. But someone has already beat him to robbing his grave, and he enters the interwebs. And even in late 2016, this is still, there's no way to not have these scenes be cringy.
Yep.
And he does some sleuthing and sells his own carcass to the jackal, but he realizes that his body, since he escaped it, the way the jackal system works is that the Otto's body would reanimate with Pete's personality, which is kind of strange. And so the dumb Octobot jumps in the tube and he fights off a remnant Peter Parker in the mindscape. And for like one page, it was like, oh, this might be interesting. It's a dumb psychic battle, but we're going to get a Spidey Doc Ock fight. And then the next page, it's like, oh, here's a cheat. I felt that scene very anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, the jackal, who with each appearance becomes more and more annoying, literally eats popcorn while watching these two entities fight on computer screens.
Well, I'm going to phrase this question. We've now seen 3 very different variations of the jackal. What's everyone's favorite?
Jack.
What do you mean? What would the first 2 be?
Well, the first one would be like the very first one. The second one being when he's the 90s version where he's like younger but still all green, where he looks like a Green Goblin ripoff.
Version
with the trench coat.
Yeah, with the zippers that go to nowhere.
I mean, the original one.
Yeah, I'll say those first 2 versions maintain the fact that this guy is crazy and it's fun. This one, I'm looking at his mask on his head and I'm like, that's got to be a lot of weight, and that just doesn't look comfortable to wear.
I mean, look, the first jackal hid a jetpack in
a trench coat.
Jacket. Trench coat, yeah. He's an amazing supervillain.
And somehow, he buys the time and prepares fully to put it together on said ridge as he makes his escape.
Yes, it's amazing.
And I think they just had fun with the original design before he gets the jacket on, because you're constantly seeing the jackal perched in these weird positions, and he comes off really creepy. Whereas in the 90s, they make him come off a lot more just normal and human-like, even if he's saying crazy things.
Super it's almost like the 90s one is like Jim Carrey on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Or how over the top he is.
But back to this jackal in this story, the AI version of Anna Maria dies, and I'd say this is sadder than Cortana's death in Halo 4, as far as AI deaths go.
I
forgot she died in Halo 4 because I forgot about Halo 4.
I've never played any Halo games.
You can stop after 3.
And so the big deal here is Doc Ock is back in a giant splash page, even though we already got that.
We already got that.
We already had it.
But now you get to see it. Now you get to see it even worse because Kevin Coley's art is bad.
Yeah, I feel like there were a few scenes which were kind of rough here, and I don't know if that's scheduling and stuff.
The coloring is really weird.
But I was really thinking about this, and we will keep seeing, because there are future auto developments as we go along. I think we'll actually read these. I think they're in this story. But just from this perspective, at this current juncture, it kind of feels like some of Superior, some of the point of Superior, some of the character development of Superior is just thrown out the window.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is Slott just saying, oh, remember that giant story I did all about Otto, which had some interesting things to say. I'm just going to reset to here's Otto from 1962 or whatever.
That's exactly what it is, and it's really disappointing.
We also get just a single panel in this issue hinting that the Kingpin is poking around. So that's Amazing Spider-Man 20. you kind of, I would say 20 you can skip entirely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clone Conspiracy number 2. We open with some scenes, in media res, no idea what the hell's going on, of Kane doing something. And there's zombies involved and shit.
Well, we'll
And
find out that they're carry-on zombies.
yeah. Then we cut to the main story. And Otto, more recap, fully explaining his situation to Peter.
A full-out double-page splash to Spider-Verse.
How he knows his identity. So he downloaded his consciousness during Spider-Verse. So I guess that kind of explains away the character stunting. But
Yes.
I don't understand this. Like, the version of Otto that's in the living brain, maybe it's from the halfway point of Superior / from Spider-Verse.
Yes.
But then so he's literally missing like 10 issues of development of Superior.
Yes.
And then I guess he like sideways then caught up with what he did, what that version of him did, but he wasn't like in the boots to understand and like develop himself. It's kind of strange.
What? I think you're overthinking it.
This version of Otto
Yeah.
that is now in Otto's body
It's from Spider-Verse.
is downloaded from Spider-Verse, but there were
Yeah.
10 issues of Superior after that, and his fight
that
with
he did not experience.
Yeah, which he did not experience, but he's now in a presence where that also happened.
Yes, but he
You're
didn't
trying to
experience
explain
it.
time travel.
So he spectated his own self going through character development and then losing to Peter,
And then didn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't experience that.
No. He didn't spectate himself.
There.
No. He didn't spectate himself. He returned to the same point that Pete did. He time traveled.
Okay.
Because he came from the 2099 crossover.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's still, this version of him, which was in the Octobot, didn't go through those 10 issues.
No.
So the character development just didn't happen with this version.
Yeah.
And you could argue those 10 issues from Otto's perspective didn't happen, don't matter. Well, they happen, but they don't matter.
Yeah.
But the Jackal interrupts what was about to be a Spidey and Otto classic fight and makes everyone chill. And there's just this one panel where Jim Chung draws this new Electro with the mask, and it looks fucking amazing.
Yep.
Just this one panel with the giant mask.
Yep.
It's so big.
Jackal gives Pete a tour, and he meets the Connors, including a S.H.I.E.L.D. reference, which there should have been a footnote here. And I mean, as far as I assume we'll see the kid in a bit. Also, what's the wife's name? Marla Connors? No, not Marla. Maria Connors?
Martha.
She is not a lizard, and so I'm not certain when that takes place. It's probably maybe at the end of this arc.
Yes, the end of this arc.
We've been thinking about that kind of stuff because the lizard family is a factor in Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man, currently ongoing.
Yeah.
I just think it's funny that I'm going to trash this book, and I know later this week when Vince and I do Comics the Show, I haven't read ASM 17 yet, but I know I'm going to be like happy and liking it. It's weird to do.
17 was amazing. It was so good.
Yeah, well, I haven't read it yet.
I was thinking today about how it's really cool that Nick Spencer's not afraid to reference parts of continuity that people don't like Secret Empire, and then I realized,
he wrote that.
Yeah, he wrote that. Oops.
Also, giant splash page. Every dead villain from Spider-Man is back. But ironically, like, there's not really many like very major ones in this.
Rose is back, and they reference that later with Kingpin.
Yeah.
And Mysterio's back. Did Quentin Beck actually die?
That's the thing.
Which time?
That's the thing is they use some of these characters, but they're the boring versions. And so I'm pretty sure this is Daniel Burkhart this year.
Oh, I didn't know he died either.
And definitely Edmund. It's definitely Edmund Hamilton, Green Goblin,
God.
because someone
Yeah.
actually refers to him as Hamilton at some point.
Oh, does he really?
Yeah.
When did Tarantula die?
Not Edmund, Barton Hamilton. The Rose is back, Kangaroo, Hitman, Mysterio.
Jack-o'-lantern's there.
There's a hobgoblin. Who fucking knows who
Who knows
that
which
is?
one that is? Well, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not the Uric one because he doesn't have his flame sword, man.
And it's not Roderick Kingsley because
He was never
Slot
the
himself.
hobgoblin.
It can't. I don't know.
Let's not talk about Hobgoblin. The funny thing is, I went on
That's a good idea right there for this show. Let's not talk about hobgoblin.
I went on the wiki to try and check some of these, and in fact, for Mysterio and for Mysterio and Hobgoblin, the links are just to like the general Mysterio and Hobgoblin pages, not one of the specific characters. So there may actually be like question on who the hell these are supposed to be.
Well,
based on
I
the
can
content.
guarantee that Mysterio will probably turn up and be Quentin Beck sometime between now and this summer when Far From Home comes out.
He was in the main Spider-Man #1.
Shit, he was. I forgot.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And we have solicits through May, and I think Hunted might end in May, or maybe it ends in the beginning of June. So, though I'd say it might be a good bet that the next arc after Hunted could be Mysterio.
And you know what? I'm 100% cool with that. I want to see a Spencer Mysterio story.
Yeah, just keep the fishbowl on.
Keep the fishbowl on.
Also back, supporting characters. Obviously, we already knew Captain Stacy. Also, Jean DeWolf and Dr. Kafka.
Dr. Kafka? Okay, fine.
I just need her to reunite with her lover, Man Wolf.
That's right.
John Jameson. And here's another big return which happens in this issue, but we don't see, is so off panel, which we don't get to see at all, I think it's happening in another tie-in series, is J. Jonah Jameson is at this point in the status quo, he's a pundit for a TV channel, and he's hyping up New You on the air at this point. And that was kind of teased toward the end, like at the end of the last arc that we read. And then it's just referenced as like having taken place for a while here, but we don't see any of it. And Marla, his return from the dead wife, introduces him to a character in Shadow. And did you guys put together who this was?
No.
You're asking me if I cared about the story to do more digging?
It's Maddie Franklin.
Oh.
Spider-Woman 3.
Yeah, the silhouette looks just like her, actually.
Yeah, with her stupid haircut. Because she was kind of Jonah's foster daughter of sorts, and actual niece. But she's back, and to check up more on Maddie Franklin and J. Jonah Jameson status quo in this story, you should go read Silk.
No. I'm not doing that.
I feel like we said all we needed to say about her in the Spider-Verse episodes.
Yeah, obviously we don't see her within this episode at all. I'm not sure if Silk jumps in later, but it's strange that Silk has an entire arc tying into this. Also, there's a Prowler miniseries which entirely ties into this, which we're also not reading. Probably some dumb shit going on in there.
I honestly don't know what happens in it. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's another thing that I get angry about, is that you have two books, one of them that shouldn't exist, and then overbloated tie-ins, which also don't really tie into anything.
Yep. It's insane.
Stop. Just tell him to
And
read a book.
then, big moment, Captain George Stacy pulls a gun on his own daughter.
Yeah.
Because, of course, it's Spider-Gwen. And so now this Clone Saga rehash just brought in all the Spider-Verse junk. And it's just, this made my annoyance like shoot through the roof.
You hate it even more.
Because I didn't know this was going to, I didn't really know that Kane and Spider-Gwen were remotely involved in this.
They are pivotal to the story. And
Because,
also completely unimportant. Just like everything else.
They're pivotal, but also in no way, shape, or form on the page are they important.
No.
They're important.
It's so weird. This entire event is so weird.
so it turns out that New You happens on other Earths and usually merges or collaborates with Parker Industries. And the cellular degeneration, which happens if you don't take your pills, turns you into a carrion zombie. And that gets us into Amazing Spider-Man 21. The focus here is on Kane, and I feel like it's not a good thing, but I feel like this one you have to kind of read, at least more so than 20.
Yes, more so than 20. Otherwise, it kind of explains the Gwen Stacy thing and the Kane thing, I guess. So sure.
We get a good goop splash page of Kane coming out of his carcass on Loom World. And he no longer is the other, I guess. I don't know how that works. Is someone else the other now? Did Dan Slott get back to that? I hope that Nick Spencer will not. But who knows? For all we know, the wife, I don't remember what they were called. For all we know, Silk and
the
Mayday. For all we know, Silk and Benji are still their avatar roles, but the other has moved on from Kane.
And Dan Slott has moved on from that story. It doesn't matter.
So he's dealing with these carrion zombies, and he refuses to get help from other spiders who just also hang out on Loom World, because this is the whole like web warriors, whatever bullshit. Because he doesn't want to infect them with the carrion thingy. But then Gwen kind of just jumps him, and it's very quickly revealed, oh, it's not airborne, so it's actually not a problem whatsoever. Just don't touch me. And I guess it happens to be Gwen because she's a big name. We get a pointless cameo from Spider-Man India, and he didn't come along for the ride. And there's a weird moment which took me out of it where Gwen Stacy says the word tiger to Kane. And that doesn't work.
I didn't even notice that. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of things I don't like, the cover of Amazing Spider-Man 21.
And the interior.
Well, the cover's misleading.
Well, the cover. Well, yeah. Well, also the suit colors are wrong. It's red and black, not red and purple.
Is it purple? That may just be like
lighting. But not only that, he's going way overboard with the fabric. Like it's one of those high tech costumes that's not really fabricy. I just don't like this era of Alex Ross art, I guess.
But on the cover, he's like clearly fighting like carrion proper, which is not a thing. But at the end of basically this issue, it goes back and forth on, oh, Kane is contagious and he's going to kill anyone that touches him. Oh, he's not contagious at all, but he's going to die and whatever. Back in Clone Conspiracy 3, at the end of the last issue, the Lizard was sent after Pete and Gwen to track him down, and within the first like 2 pages of this, they just trash him, and it was not a remote threat. And then I guess there is a Spider-Woman reference I assume that happened before this because that Silk like 14 is tying into this, and Spider Woman had to have been earlier. But Pete makes like a weird comment about how he hasn't been seeing Gwen lately, but he knows that she's been hanging out with Jessica Drew. No footnote or anything. If there was a footnote, I would be okay with it. But it's
Yeah,
just
that'd be useful.
it's just a totally pointless comment, which kind of just makes Pete sound weird. And Kane shows up at Horizon Labs or whatever with the clone Gwen, and he's like, oh, I'm contagious, blah blah, freaking out. And then Anna Maria is like, actually, why didn't you tell us all of this earlier? Because we may be able to use you for a cure. And Anna Maria also, another smart move from her, she decides, let's just call the cops because we know exactly who's doing this, where they are, what's going down, and everything like that. But of course, the one person at the station who happens to pick up the phone is in on the take.
It's like so convenient too.
It's an officer who died in the line of duty, and she pops her pill as she hangs up the phone.
Yeah. Never mind. Let's just move past it.
And
let's go because I'm gonna have a nosebleed if I explain how stupid and contrived that is.
Others are in on the take as well. The Jackal hosts a meeting with like members of the military and the FDA, and it's just like to show that there's a greater conspiracy. Like they're sitting at the table, and he like says two words to them, and then they just go off panel. Like nothing is accomplished in that meeting besides the fact that Jackal just like belittles Jonah in front of everyone, because Jonah's current motivation is that, okay, you brought my wife back, you brought my niece surrogate daughter back, but what about my dad, who was the genesis of this entire story? And the Jackal's like, nah, I'll get to that when I get to it.
Never mind. Yeah, never mind.
Then Rhino and Electro, they rescue Clone Gwen. They take Kane and Anna Maria. And well, they take Kane, and Anna Maria is just like, hey, take me too. And this is the only part where I'm like, okay, I'm slightly interested to see where this goes, because I assume it's super obvious. Anna Maria is going to come face to face with Otto, and that's going to cause some kind of turn or twist in the plot.
Will it? Because we already learned in the last story that she has no feelings for Otto after learning that he was a monster.
Well, sort of. It's kind of weird. Because even in this story, there's the moment where she asks Pete, she's like, hey, living brain, can I get that back? And by the end, and it was heavily hinted that she knew it was Otto at the end. And then I think, yeah, Pete's with Gwen, with Spider Gwen, and they're talking about something, and he has like a Spider-Mobile or some shit, and talking about Parker Industries and his status quo. And Gwen's like, you're not at all like the Peter Parker from my world. And Pete says, a lot of people think I'm not like from my world, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But it came off meta to me as Dan Slott trying to defend this status quo against the criticism that he was getting from a lot of fans. And then towards the end of this issue, Kingpin shows up with files in a folder and tries to make a deal with Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's just like, actually, I have all the leverage, so I'm just going to take these files. And I'm assuming Kingpin doesn't show up again. I don't know. I mean, he probably does, but there's no real reason for him to come back in, and he really didn't do much at all here at all.
I'm pretty sure he shows up in the very last issue.
Yeah, well, because the next arc sets up Kingpin. The next arc is Kingpin stuff after the Clone Conspiracy. But he kind of just shows up.
It's Green Goblin stuff.
And then we have Pete fighting the Jackal. But the big reveal takes off the Anubis mask, and the Jackal is Ben Reilly, Peter Parker's brother from another blood cell. And The thing is, you're gonna do this Clone Saga rehashed, Clone Saga sequel, big giant event. Trying to attract all these nostalgic '90s people. This panel is where none of the Clone Saga people are with you anymore.
No.
The few
Yes.
It's
the
so
second
interesting.
people who like Ben Riley, they don't want this at all.
It's so interesting because Dan Slott literally went, "Hey, you all hate the Clone Saga. You all hate everything about the Clone Saga. You hate Ben Riley. Look, he's a bad guy now. Don't you like it?" And then everyone went, "No."
Everyone was like, no,
It's
that's not what we
also,
want.
you know
We
what the
just don't
worst
want
part
you to
about this
touch
is
it
though?
anymore. That's what we want.
The worst part about this page is that I read it and I got to the end and I'm like, it went from a blood cell from a cheek swab.
True. But the thing is, all right, all the people who hated the Clone Saga, they're gonna hate this too. But
Yeah.
going through this fucking podcast and everything, and even just in general, based on like my tendencies and everything, I would count myself in the person. I don't like the Clone Saga, but it's like it's hard after reading through all this shit. It's hard to still be like, all right, this Clone Saga thing. Never read it, never care about it, never discuss it, pretend it didn't happen. It's hard for me to go that perspective. And also, it's like by the very end, I was like, hey, this Ben Riley guy, he's pretty cool. And his death scene, I would say, very iconic.
Yeah,
One of
it was
the
a
biggest
good. It was
moments.
a good issue. It was a pretty good moment.
Yeah, I disagree with the first part. I do think that nobody could ever read it. But no, by the end, I ended up actually liking Ben.
Yeah.
And like you said, his death was amazing. And this is just,
If Ben were
it's,
to come back in the same kind of vein that Kane came back, I think we'd be fine with it. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the masses of people.
I would not mind seeing Ben Riley in the modern 616.
Well,
Well, we'll get there, but
Okay. I would not mind seeing the Ben
I
Riley I
always
actually
put
like.
mouth on my
Damn it.
syndrome.
We're gonna read that stuff, aren't we? Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh
the
no.
first arc.
and so then the end of this issue, the other big reveal uh, is that there's a coffin that Ben just snaps and it's there. And he dug up Uncle Ben's body.
Look, Pete, I desecrated your uncle's grave. Don't you love me?
Yep.
Fuck this.
I hate how there's a crack in Spider-Man's lenses because it's supposed to be a high-tech suit, but still there's fabric so his hair can poke out. There's nothing consistent about this.
No.
Also, once again, I will say, if you bring Uncle Ben back, it's still going to be a clone.
Yep.
So no, there's no drama here.
But no, it's different this time because they're not clones because of the whole flashback thing, except for they are clones. It's
Also, we haven't really fully commented on this. The naming conventions for this crossover, as it was coming out and being marketed, just really confused me.
it was
I think they're very
infuriating.
strange.
It was so bad. You had they announced it as Dead No More, and then they had Before Dead No More, which at some point became Before Clone Conspiracy, but it was still marketed as Before Dead No More. It's so confusing.
And then on the cover of Clone Conspiracy, if you were to just take the cover text, and it's not like there's any marketing text, there's no like burst captions like back in the day or like on One More Day. If you were to just take all the text, which is all at the top, the title of the series is An Amazing Spider-Man Event, Dead No More, The Clone Conspiracy. And it's like, what is it actually called? Just Clone Conspiracy. But the whole Dead No More aspect of it just really like threw a wrench in things. And it's kind of like redundant titling. It doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't even like, at least so far in the story, it's not even like there has been no line from someone where it's like, and they are dead no more. or like this is a clone conspiracy, and I don't know, it really confused me at the time, and I think it's very strange now.
Yeah.
But I guess that's pretty much it for this episode. Does anyone have any final thoughts on this part of clone conspiracy?
I can't wait to see how this is wrapped up terribly.
It's just
No,
tiring.
that sound
Man.
is perfect, actually.
Yeah. Yep. I guess. Yeah, I've got nothing.
Clone conspiracy number 1 was $5, but the other issue is surprisingly just a regular price.
That's horrible.
This is just, it's such a bad event. It's just such a bad story.
Yep. So the Jackal is Ben Riley, and we got 1 or 2 very iconic Alex Ross covers coming up. There's one.
Just throwing that word around with no weight behind it.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching this show, and watch the next one. We've only got a few more, and so thank you for enjoying episode 69.